I still remember the sound of her laughter echoing through the hallway of our old farmhouse. It wasn't loud or wild, but soft, like the tinkling of wind chimes when the breeze passes gently by. My name's Evelyn Carter, and I used to believe that love, once given, was enough to hold a family together. But love, as I learned the hard way, can be buried beneath misunderstandings, silence, and time slipping through your fingers before you even realize it. This is the story of how I lost my daughter, how time and regret turned her into a stranger, and how every choice I made, or failed to make, haunted me every day since. I raised my daughter Claire, alone after her father passed when she was just 4 years old. He was a kind man, quiet and thoughtful, who built birdhouses in the backyard and sang lullabies with a shaky voice. When he died suddenly from a heart attack, I thought the world collapsed around me. But somehow I kept going, for her. I promised myself that I would be mother and father both, that I would give her everything he couldn't. We moved into a small house in a quiet town. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and helping at the local diner in the morning. I remember sitting at the kitchen table late at night, falling asleep with her school books open next to her, dreaming of better days. I wanted her to have what I never had, stability, education, and a chance to pursue her dreams. She was a bright child, curious, sensitive, sometimes stubborn, always honest. She loved painting, collecting seashells, and reading stories about places far beyond our little town. She would curl up beside me and ask questions about everything. Mom, where did Daddy go? Do you think I'll be famous one day? I'd stroke her hair, kiss her forehead, and tell her, you'll be whoever you want to be. Those early years were filled with warmth and laughter. We'd bake together on Sundays, gingerbread cookies, apple pies, and dance in the living room like no one was watching. I'd tell her, you're my sunshine, Claire. I'll always be here. But the world doesn't promise forever. Life creeps in quietly. By the time Claire reached high school, the distance between us started growing like an invisible wall neither of us knew how to break down. She started to stay out late with friends, talking about college applications, fashion trends, and weekend trips. I tried to talk to her to guide her, but she would roll her eyes or mumble something about being an adult. I'd remind her gently, you can always talk to me, sweetheart. I'll always be here. But she'd sigh and walk away. And I let it happen. I thought space would help her grow. I thought pushing too hard would make her drift even further. I believed silence was strength, patience, love. But sometimes silence is weakness. Sometimes waiting for things to improve only lets the cracks widen. She left for college 2 years after graduation. I was so proud when she got accepted into a prestigious university across the state. I cried when I dropped her off, but I held back the tears because I wanted her to feel confident, independent. We promised to keep in touch. Call me any time, Claire, I told her at the bus station. She smiled, hugged me tight, and whispered, I love you, Mom. But life got busy for both of us, and those calls became less frequent. Texts replaced phone calls. Then even those faded. The house grew colder after she left. Her room stayed untouched, posters on the walls, journals stacked on the desk, half-finished paintings still drying on the easel. I told myself she was happy. I told myself she was chasing her dreams. But at night, I'd sit by the window and stare into the dark, wondering if she even thought of me. I started to miss her without knowing it. I never imagined it would get this bad. I never thought I'd feel so abandoned. And then came the day when I learned that absence wasn't the only thing tearing us apart. I'll tell you how everything unraveled, step by painful step. But before I get there, I want you to understand that this story isn't about perfect people. It's about love that tried its hardest and failed, about silence that turned into regret, and about a mother's heart, broken but never giving up. This is how I lost my daughter, to time, to regret, and to choices I thought would protect her but ended up pushing her away. It was a rainy afternoon when I first felt something was wrong. I had been sorting through old photo albums, pictures of Claire from when she was a toddler to her high school graduation. I traced her face with my finger as the rain tapped gently against the window. I smiled to myself, remembering how much she loved splashing through puddles, how she once wore mismatched shoes to school just because she liked the way it looked. But then my phone buzzed. I hesitated before picking it up. There was a message from an unknown number. "Can't wait to see you tonight. It's been too long. Kiss mark." I froze. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't meant for Claire. Maybe it was spam. But something in my chest twisted. I unlocked my phone and searched through the message thread. My hands trembled. I found more texts. "Late at night. Over the past few months. Missing you every day. Let's not let distance keep us apart. You're everything I ever wanted." My heart felt like it was about to burst. It took a while before I could even breathe again. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, reading each message over and over until they blurred into meaningless symbols. But deep inside I knew what it meant. It wasn't just friendship. It wasn't just a silly crush. It was something more, something darker. I called Claire immediately. The first ring went unanswered. The second. The third. Finally, she picked up, breathless. "Hey, Mom. I cut her off. "Who's you in this conversation?" My voice shook. There was silence. I don't know what you mean." I could hear her breathing on the other side. I could hear the hesitation, the guilt, the fear. I forced myself to speak calmly, though my chest burned. "Claire, I saw the messages. The ones you've been sending." There was a long pause, then, barely audible, she whispered, "It's not what you think. But what I thought, what I felt, what I feared." It screamed louder than any explanation. "Who is it?" I asked softly, though the question cut like glass. She hesitated again. It's someone I shouldn't have gotten involved with." I closed my eyes. My hand trembled. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg her to tell me it wasn't true. But something colder than grief began to rise inside me. I whispered, "Who, Claire? Please." The silence stretched like a canyon. Then, she said it. It was someone I trusted. Someone who visited our home often. Someone I never thought could do this to me. The world stopped. My mind went blank. My chest tightened like an iron band. I wanted to feel pain, but even that eluded me for a moment. I didn't mean for it to happen, Mom. I swear. It just happened," she sobbed. I pressed my nails into my palm, struggling to stay composed. "Who is it, Claire?" I demanded again. "I don't know how to say this," she whispered. But the next words shattered me. "It's your best friend's son." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the phone as if it were a foreign object. The rain outside slowed. The world seemed to hold its breath. I could hear her sniffles, hear her pain, but in that moment, all I could hear was the echo of everything I failed to see, the loneliness in her eyes, the emptiness she carried, the way I thought silence was enough. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to ask how. I wanted to scream that she ruined everything, that she broke my heart, that she betrayed the bond between families. But what came out of my mouth instead was a whisper. "Get some rest, Claire," I said, barely able to breathe. The call ended. I sat staring at the dark screen until the battery died. 4 days after, I barely ate. I barely slept. I would wander around the house at night, running my hands along the walls as if they could hold the memories that had escaped me. I avoided calling her. I avoided listening to the doorbell. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about trust, about the fragile threads that tie relationships together. It was about silence, loneliness, and the way life doesn't pause for grief. I kept replaying every moment we spent together. Did I miss the signs? Did she ask for help, and I turned away? Did my exhaustion, my constant worrying, push her to seek love elsewhere? Questions consumed me. But beneath it all, something else began to form. Something dark, something that whispered that forgiveness wouldn't come easily. After that phone call, something inside me broke, but it didn't shatter all at once. It cracked slowly, like old porcelain left too long in the cold, until every piece eventually crumbled. For days I walked through the house like a ghost. The silence was suffocating. Every room held memories of Claire, her laughter, her drawings taped to the refrigerator, her half-finished homework scattered on the kitchen counter. But now, those memories felt like evidence against me. I kept wondering, how could I have missed this? How could I have been so blind? I would sit in the living room, staring blankly at the fireplace. My eyes would drift to the empty chair where she once sat, and I would whisper, "Why, Claire? Why?" I thought about calling her back. I thought about screaming into the phone, telling her everything I felt, everything she'd done. But I couldn't. Every time I lifted the phone, my hand froze. I'd lower it without pressing call. That's when the darkness started to creep in. It wasn't immediate. It didn't feel like anger at first. It felt like grief. The kind that seeps into your bones and eats away at every breath you take. The grief of knowing that the little girl you raised, the one who used to curl up next to you at night and ask for bedtime stories, was now hiding secrets from you. I'd close my eyes at night and see her face. Not the face she showed me, but the one that smiled at someone else in whispers and in stolen glances. I felt betrayed not just by her actions, but by the fact that I wasn't enough. I hadn't been enough to protect her from loneliness. I hadn't been enough to give her what she needed. I kept wondering, was it my fault? Had I been so consumed by my own life that I failed her? One night, I sat at my desk, the old oak one where I used to write letters to her when she was away at college. I opened it, pulled out blank sheets, and stared at them for hours without writing a word. The next morning, I began planning. At first, it felt wrong. How could I, a mother, even think about revenge? But the thought kept growing. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. If love had been replaced by betrayal, I told myself, then I would show Claire what it meant to be abandoned, to be powerless, to feel the weight of regret. The idea terrified me, but also gave me a sense of purpose. If I could no longer save her, I could at least make her understand the pain she left behind. The first step was information. I began quietly watching her without letting her know. I checked her social media profiles, traced old messages, and kept notes on who she talked to. It wasn't about spying, it was about understanding. I discovered she had isolated herself from most of her old friends. She spent hours online, scrolling through pictures and sending private messages. The person she had been involved with, my friend's son, had since distanced himself as well, afraid of being caught. But that wasn't the part that shocked me. What shook me was how alone she was. No real support. No close friends. Only silence. The world she had built around her betrayal was crumbling. And still, a part of me felt pity. But pity alone wouldn't heal the wound inside me. I wanted her to feel the emptiness I felt when I realized she was hiding everything. I wanted her to understand what it was like to lose connection, to watch people turn away. I began planning ways to confront her, not with screams or anger, but with silence, withdrawal, and strategic acts that would mirror her own choices. I thought about exposing the affair, letting the whole community see her mistakes. But I hesitated. Would that destroy her completely? Would it be too cruel? After all, she was still my child. I decided instead to create a slow-burning loneliness that would force her to reflect. The first step was withdrawing warmth. I stopped answering her calls. I didn't reply to texts. Whenever she came by, I acted as if she were a stranger passing by. The second step was manipulating small details. I gently withdrew support, canceling plans, being unavailable when she needed advice, letting her feel the absence of a listening ear. The third step, the most painful, was cutting off emotional anchors. I stopped revisiting old memories with her. I packed away her childhood toys. I stored away photographs. I pretended that the past had disappeared. And yet, with every calculated move, I found myself crying afterward. I hated myself for it. I hated that I wanted her to suffer, but I also couldn't stop. Some nights, I would sit at the table with an untouched plate in front of me, tears slipping silently down my cheeks as I whispered into the darkness. "Why did you do this to me, Claire?" Then I would wipe my tears and remind myself that this was what she needed. That only through facing the cold emptiness could she see what love meant. One evening, I overheard her crying softly in her room. I stood frozen by the door, tears threatening to spill from my eyes. But I walked away. I reminded myself that love isn't always about comfort. Sometimes it's about allowing someone to face their own darkness. I let the guilt crawl under my skin, but I didn't stop. Weeks passed. Her calls grew fewer. Her messages went unanswered. Her eyes lost their sparkle. She began looking thinner, more fragile. But still, she didn't reach out. I wondered if she was numb. Or worse, if she had given up. And in the quiet hours, when the house was empty, I sat alone and whispered to myself, "Let this be a lesson. Let the pain teach her what it feels like to be abandoned by the one she loves. Let her regret the choices that tore apart our bond. Let time be the mirror she cannot escape." The moment I decided to stop holding back, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It wasn't the peace of forgiveness, nor the comfort of love. It was something colder, sharper, and far more deliberate. I wasn't going to destroy Claire in a single blow. I wanted every step to hurt, every wound to linger, every silence to echo in the spaces where laughter once lived. I knew this wouldn't be easy. I knew I would tear myself apart in the process. But some wounds, I told myself, only healed by being forced to stare at their scars. The first act of revenge came quietly. One morning, Claire texted me, "Can we talk? Please." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "I'm busy. Call later." It wasn't cruel, it was deliberate. I knew she would wait by the phone. I knew she would rehearse conversations in her head. I knew she would hope, again and again, that I'd respond. But I let her wait. Days later, she showed up at my doorstep. Her eyes were red. Her face pale. She clutched a coffee cup tightly like it was the only anchor she had. "Grandma," she whispered, as if afraid I'd turn her away before she spoke. I stood at the door with a neutral expression. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I told her softly. "But I can't help you right now." Her lips trembled. "Please," she began, but I shook my head. "It's time you figure things out." She stood there, frozen. Finally, she whispered, "You're punishing me." I didn't respond. I closed the door. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the way her eyes pleaded, the way her voice cracked with desperation. For a moment, I wanted to go to her, hold her, tell her that I still loved her. But the anger in my chest burned too fiercely. I reminded myself, This was for her own good. The second act was more deliberate. I began talking to people from her past, not to gossip, but to quietly make sure they all distanced themselves from her. I called her childhood friend, Jenny, pretending I was concerned for Claire's well-being. "Do you know how she's doing?" I asked softly. Jenny sighed. "Not good. She's withdrawn. Doesn't answer. Keeps to herself." I pressed gently. "Do you think you should keep your distance? I'm worried she's dragging you down." By the next week, Jenny's messages to Claire stopped. I repeated this with 2 others. Within days, Claire's little circle crumbled. No one reached out. No one visited. No one cared. The loneliness that had been creeping in now wrapped around her like a thick blanket she couldn't shake off. The third act was the hardest. I knew that cutting off emotional anchors wouldn't be enough. She needed to see that the past she clung to, the memories she replayed at night, no longer existed. So I packed everything. I wrapped up her childhood drawings, letters, stuffed animals, photographs, school awards, and even the little things she had left behind. I kept them in storage, locked away. When she asked one day, "Grandma, can I see my photo album?" I smiled gently. "I thought you might want to start fresh," I said, handing her a new album with blank pages. She stared at it as if I had handed her an empty grave. Her face crumpled. She didn't cry, she just sat silently. That silence broke me. But I looked away. After that day, I stopped cooking her favorite meals. I stopped leaving notes in the kitchen. I stopped remembering her preferences, her allergies, the way she liked her coffee. I became cold on purpose. Every time she hesitated at the door or lingered in the hallway, I reminded myself not to soften. There were nights when I lay awake, haunted by the sight of her face crumpling into nothingness. There were days when I wanted to call her back, to tell her I missed her. But I held firm. I told myself, this is what she needs. Weeks passed. Her visits became infrequent. When she did come, she spoke little. The sparkle that once danced in her eyes was gone. The girl who used to chatter endlessly was now quiet, almost invisible. I feared I had gone too far. But when I caught myself on the verge of breaking, I clenched my jaw and turned away. Then came the final act. I decided she needed to feel the deepest emptiness, not through harsh words or anger, but through absence. So one afternoon, I pretended to be ill. I called her and told her, "I need you. Please come." Her voice trembled. "I'm coming," she said. I hung up. When she arrived, I acted weak. I clung to my bed, barely able to speak. She rushed to my side, tears in her eyes. "Grandma, I'm here. I'll stay with you." I looked at her and whispered, "You should go. You have your own life." Her eyes filled with pain. "Please don't shut me out," she begged. I closed my eyes. "I'm tired, Claire," she sobbed. I stayed silent. She sat by my bedside for hours, holding my hand. Finally, as dusk fell, she whispered, "I'll always be here for you." But in my heart, I knew this was the moment. If she stayed, she would cling to hope. If she left, she would face the hollow truth. So I mustered all the strength I had left and gently told her, "It's time you stand on your own." Her eyes searched mine, desperate for comfort. But I stayed cold. She left in silence. That night, I wept until dawn. The house echoed with my sobs. But I knew, I had done what I set out to do. I hadn't screamed at her. I hadn't cursed her. I hadn't destroyed her in one blow. I had given her the hardest lesson of all, the feeling of losing what you thought would never disappear. Days turned into weeks. She stopped calling altogether. Her silence became permanent. But somewhere deep inside, I hoped that she would reflect. That she would look back at the memories we shared and realize the value of love. That she would find her way back, wiser and stronger. Or at least, that she would understand why I had to let her fall. This is how I executed my revenge. Not with fire, but with absence. Not with shouting, but with silence. Not with hate, but with the unbearable weight of regret. And though it broke my heart with every step, I knew that some lessons could only be learned in the harshest of ways. It's been months since Claire stopped coming to the house. The silence I once wielded as a weapon now echoes louder than any scream ever could. It fills the rooms where her laughter used to bounce, where her footsteps used to echo. I walk through the halls, and every corner whispers her name, every chair holds the shape of her absence. At first, I told myself this was necessary. I repeated it over and over, like a prayer, until it felt almost true. She needed this. She needed to learn. She needed to stand on her own. But nights like these, when the house goes still and the wind scrapes against the windows, I wonder, did I teach her strength, or did I teach her to break? I sit by the fire with my hands wrapped around a mug of tea, the steam rising like memories I cannot quite grasp. I remember her as a child, running through the garden with scraped knees, laughing breathlessly as I chased after her with a bandage. I remember how she clung to my neck when storms came, how she whispered secrets in the dark, how she trusted me with her fears and dreams. Where did that child go? Did I push her too far? Was my silence too heavy a punishment? I clutched the mug tighter, and tears slipped down my cheeks. The firelight dances on my wrinkled skin as if mocking me. One afternoon, as I sat lost in thought, the doorbell rang. My heart stopped. I froze. For a moment, I hoped, prayed that it was her. But it wasn't. It was a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. I just wanted to check on you, she said kindly. It's been quiet. I forced a smile and nodded. After she left, I sat back down by the fire and whispered to the empty room, I miss her. That's when I realized, the lesson I wanted her to learn wasn't about resilience or independence. It was about love. And love is something that cannot be taught through absence, only through presence, patience, and forgiveness. Weeks later, I wrote her a letter. My hands trembled as I picked up the pen. I poured everything into it, the mistakes I made, the loneliness I feel, the unconditional love that still burns inside me despite everything. I didn't know if she'd ever read it. But I needed to say it. I ended the letter with this. I may have pushed you away, but my heart has never left you. You were, and always will be, my daughter. I didn't send it immediately. For days, I stared at the envelope, unsure if I should let it go. But one evening, when the sunset painted the sky orange and purple, I finally sealed it. It felt like setting down a weight I could no longer carry. I learned something profound through this pain. Revenge is a fire that consumes more than it burns. It doesn't only punish the wrongdoer, it scorches the heart that holds it too long. Love, on the other hand, is patient and forgiving. It bends but doesn't break, it holds but doesn't suffocate. I can't change what I did. I can't rewind time or erase the cracks in the bond we shared. But I can choose to forgive myself, and to hope, however faintly, that one day she'll understand why I let go. So now, every morning, I light a candle for her. I whisper her name and pray for her happiness. I remind myself that love isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's the quiet prayers whispered to the wind, hoping they'll carry your heart back to someone you once held close. And even if she never comes back, I'll always love her. That's the lesson I've learned. Love doesn't disappear. It lingers, through silence, through regret, through time. And it waits. Always.